Good morning. Welcome to the hearing on the Committee on Housing and Building. At this time, please silence all electronics. If you wish to testify, please fill out a slip at the back of the room. If you want to testify online, you may do so at testimony@council.nyc.gov. That is testimony@council.nyc.gov. At this time, no one is to approach the dais. I repeat, no one is to approach the dais. If you need any assistance, please contact a sergeant. Chair, you may begin.
Thank you, Sergeant, and good morning. I am Councilmember Pierina Sanchez, Chair of the committee. Let me put this a little closer. I've got my 3 cushions to make me look taller, but I gotta pull up the mic. Good morning. I'm Councilmember Pierina Sanchez, Chair of the Committee on Housing and Buildings. Thank you for joining us today for our hearing on the J51 tax program. I would like to thank all of our colleagues who are present, Councilmember Hudson, Councilmember Aviles, and Councilmember Abreu. As always, I want to begin by setting the stage. New York's intersecting crises of rising evictions, record homelessness, and housing unaffordability are worsening. The most recent income and affordability study by the Rent Guidelines Board, released just last month, highlights that non-payment filings in housing court increased by 23% in 2023, while non-payment cases actually heard increased by 34.5%. And the number of residential evictions has risen by 195.4% between 2022 and 2023, concentrated in communities of color and low and moderate income communities across the city. The HVS, the Housing Vacancy Survey, also showed us earlier this year that we're confronting the lowest vacancy rate on record since the 1960s at 1.4%, with nearly 90% of unassisted low-income households severely rent-burdened and housing for low-cost rentals at a functional 0. That means that unless you live in an affordable housing, in an affordable apartment in New York City, you basically cannot find one. As the demand for housing continues to surge and supply remains severely constrained, low-income and working-class New Yorkers are leaving in record numbers. In charting the path forward, we must increase housing supply, increase New Yorkers' ability to afford their homes so we can stay and contribute to our city's vibrancy, and invest in building upgrades and tenant protections so that tenants may remain safely in their homes. That is why we are here today to discuss the J51 tax incentive. The J51 program has historically been a tax abatement and tax exemption program. It provides tax incentives for building owners to rehab their buildings, make repairs and upgrades by providing temporary relief from an increase in annual real estate taxes that would otherwise result from the increase in assessed value of the property due to conversion, alterations, or improvements. In the past, the incentive reduced or eliminated existing real estate taxes, usually on both buildings and land, based on a percentage of the cost of the work that was performed. J51 has existed for about 70 years in various iterations to respond to housing shortages and housing conditions. Every few years, the state enacts legislation that enables the City Council to pass legislation extending the J51 program in New York City within the confines of the state law. This fall, Governor Hochul signed into law the Affordable Housing Rehabilitation Program, which allows the city to pass legislation by June 30th, 2025 to provide the J51 tax abatement. The last J51 extension expired in June 30th, 2022. The Affordable Housing Rehab Program alters the J51 program to try to address concerns raised by advocates over the years, including criticisms over enforcement mechanisms, tenant protections, and the exemption portion of the program. When we provide tax breaks that reduce the tax collection by the city, we must ensure that the benefit is targeted and fulfills the goals of the program. By looking back on how the program has performed historically, we can make changes where necessary to ensure that the abatement program allows building owners to make necessary repairs to their buildings, improve living conditions for tenants, while also providing adequate oversight. To that end, we will hear intros number 654 in relation to the abatement of taxation for alterations and improvements to certain multiple dwellings. I would like to thank my team, Sam Cardenas, my Chief of Staff, Kadeem Robinson, or as my child calls them, Kadeem, our Legislative and Communications Director, my Deputy Chief of Staff, as well as the Housing and Buildings Committee staff, Taylor Zaloni, Austin Maloney, Taylor Zeleny, Austin Maloney, Jose Conde, Andrew Bourne, Dan Krupp, and Reese Hirota. I will now turn it to Committee Counsel to administer the oath. I also, just before we start with the administration, I want to acknowledge that we've been joined by the Battery City Middle School in Councilmember Marte's district. Hello, welcome.
Please raise your right hand. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before this committee and to respond honestly to council member questions? You may begin when ready.
All right. Good morning, Chair Sanchez and members of the Committee on Housing and Buildings. My name is Kim Darga, and I am the Deputy Commissioner for Development at the Department of Housing Preservation and Development. I'm joined by my colleagues Lucy Jaffe, our Associate Commissioner of Housing Policy, and Tricia Dietz, our Assistant Commissioner for Housing Incentives. We thank you for the opportunity to testify in Introduction 654, sponsored by Chair Sanchez. A significant part of HPD's focus is on housing quality and stabilization. J51 has long been one of the agency's most important tools for that purpose. Following enactment of authorizing legislation by the state legislature in 2023, this bill would authorize New York City to once again implement J51, a long-standing as-of-right preservation program. The program incentivizes and partially offsets the cost of major capital improvements in low-cost residential buildings that otherwise struggle to fund this type of work. Through J51, we ensure that residents in low-cost housing can live in safe, quality, and energy-efficient buildings. Since J51 lapsed at the state level in 2019, there has been no as-of-right preservation tool available. This followed years in which we allowed J51 to become outdated and underutilized, leaving a significant gap in our arsenal of resources to ensure the quality and longevity of our remaining low-cost housing. While J51 has been used in a range of housing types, it plays a critical role in the ecosystem of rent stabilization in particular. As you know, for decades, we saw rising rents across our rent-stabilized housing stock and the loss of hundreds of thousands of low-cost rental homes. In 2019, the state legislature passed the Housing Stability and Tenant Protection Act, HSTPA, limiting owners' ability to increase rents or to exit rent stabilization. We want to ensure, however, that owners of rent-stabilized buildings also continue to invest in and improve building quality, particularly as our rent-stabilized buildings age. Our rent-stabilized stock is typically older than our market rate housing, while on a whole, it is in relatively good shape as measured by the New York City Housing and Vacancy Survey. It is generally occupied by older New Yorkers, lower income New Yorkers, and households that are more likely to have a member with a disability, making it especially important that we maintain building quality to protect these New Yorkers, or those New Yorkers who are most vulnerable to poor building health. Major capital improvements such as installation or replacement of heating systems, plumbing, wiring, elevators, windows, or roofing are exactly the types of critical upgrades that impact housing quality for residents of the entire building. These types of improvements ensure that New Yorkers get to live in safe, quality, and more sustainable housing. The new J51 program, which the Council has the opportunity to authorize for use in New York City, offers a well-targeted resource that partially offsets the cost of major capital improvements while critically prohibiting those costs from getting passed along to current or future rent-stabilized tenants. Rather than financing the improvements through higher rents, the building owner can qualify for a property tax abatement, reducing the cost of operations. For our rent-stabilized stock, J51 is therefore a critical complement to HSTPA, allowing New Yorkers to live in and benefit from low-cost housing for decades to come without sacrificing building quality or sustainability upgrades. While J51 is a critical tool for rent-stabilized housing, the program will also benefit other multifamily housing, such as Mitchell-Lamas, other affordable regulated housing, and lower-cost cooperatives. many of which are also struggling to keep up with ongoing major capital work and invest in improvements that improve sustainability. Here, too, J51 creates opportunity for work that is central to ensuring building health and stabilization without passing those costs on to low and moderate income residents. To be eligible for J51, the owner must first notify tenants within 30 days and no more than 180 days after commencement of work. The owner must submit an application along with proof of payment to HPD within 4 months of completing the work. As part of the application review, HPD physically inspects to ensure the work is complete. Once deemed eligible, HPD issues a certificate of eligibility and notifies the Department of Finance of the approved maximum amount of the abatement. DOF applies the J51 benefit to the building's property taxes, reducing taxes by 70% of the total eligible costs, applied at 8 1/3% each year for up to 20 years. HPD also notifies New York State Homes and Community Renewal, HCR, so that they can ensure that J51 covered work is not eligible for major capital improvement increase, MCI increases. None of the work covered by J51 can be passed along to tenants as rent increases. This version of J51 is better than the old version. First, it's better targeted to buildings with low-cost housing, those buildings that might otherwise struggle to pay for these types of improvements, and in which we are very focused on keeping our low-cost housing low cost. The eligible building types are: 1, those already receiving substantial government assistance, such as the city's affordable housing and Mitchell-Lamas. 2, rental buildings in which 50% of the units are low cost, which is defined here as having rents lower or equal, below 80% of AMI. There's some typos in the text. Cooperative and condo buildings with an average assessed value of less than $45,000 per unit. Second, the CRC schedule will remain relevant and appropriate as scopes of work and costs change. If passed as designed, we believe that owners will find it more beneficial to use J51 than MCI increases, but only if the CRC schedule is up to date. J51 was once a program designed to help encourage indoor plumbing. It was created in 1955. Now we expect many buildings will be using it not only to replace major building systems like roofs and heating, but also to improve building efficiency and meet their new Local Law 97 mandates. If passed, HPD will create a greened CRC schedule so that users are making the more sustainable and efficient choices whenever possible and helping the city meet its carbon reduction and Local Law 97 goals. As our city evolves, so much must J51. Third, it's easier to use and provides a more predictable benefit. The prior J51 program had both an exemption and abatement component, in addition to complex eligibility requirements based on project type and the scope of work provided. Users often had a difficult time determining whether assessed value would increase and assessing the impact of the exemption on future property taxes. In the new program, the user can assess their scope of work, their costs, and the CRC schedule, and know if they are eligible and the amount of the benefit and plan accordingly. Fourth, it is more protective of tenants. Owners will not be able to apply to HCR for MCI increases for the work covered by J51. While owners opt to use J51, and when owners opt to use J51 instead of MCIs, there will be no rent increases for current or future tenants associated with the J51 scope. There are also new provisions to guard against tenant harassment. Finally, this version of J51 gives HPD new and enhanced tools for enforcement oversight and procedures, up to and including revocation of the benefit in cases of noncompliance or harassment. There are also 2 new timing requirements. Owners are required to complete work started under a J51 scope within 30 months and are required to submit an application to HPD within 4 months of completion. Together, these requirements will allow HPD to more fully review and inspect work scopes and ensure that the work submitted was completed in a timely manner. While we are often before City Council talking about new housing, preservation of existing low-cost housing is one of our critical goals. While we continue to invest in housing preservation through various HPD loan programs, we have been missing J51, one of the most impactful programs in terms of supporting investment in housing quality. Over the last 15 years, more than 9,600 buildings use J51, resulting in increased building health for more than 300,000 households. After 5 years without an as-of-right preservation tool, we finally have an opportunity to bring back J51, and not just the J51 of the past. This will be a better, more efficient, more targeted J51 that we think more building owners will choose to use, helping us meet many of our housing goals at once, investing in and improving building health and quality, keeping rents and common charges low, particularly in our low-cost housing, and advancing our sustainability goals to benefit all New Yorkers. But we can only do that if this bill is passed as soon as possible. State law authorizes J51 through June 2026, so we are already 2 years into the eligibility period. We want to take full advantage of the remaining time that we have to benefit as many New Yorkers as possible. We're grateful to this committee and the council more broadly for your shared focus on preservation and stabilization. Thank you for the opportunity to provide you with an overview of the agency's support of this critical program. We welcome any follow-up questions that you may have.
Thank you so much, Deputy Commissioner. I'd like to acknowledge that we've also been joined by Councilmember Dinowitz. Okay, so thank you. So to start, I want to just focus in on the past administration of the program so that we can have that baseline among members and among colleagues and the public today. And then I'll give a chance for my colleagues to ask any questions that they have, and then I'll follow up on questions about the new version and the changes that have been proposed. So you've answered my first question: how many buildings over the last or over the course of the program have applied? You said 9,600, I believe. So can you share, just breaking that down, how many buildings applied to the program, and what were some reasons for denial in the previous versions of the program?
So the universe that applied was certainly greater than the universe that received benefits. The 9,600 buildings are those that actually applied and were deemed eligible. There were more that applied and have either not completed the process, right? We're still processing applications for work through the June 2022 deadline. And also there were buildings that were not eligible. And that's for a few reasons. Sometimes people apply for work that's not actually eligible based on the CRC schedule, or they don't meet certain other eligibility provisions of the programs. For example, a condo or cooperative building that has an assessed value above the AV cap. Those are two of the biggest reasons, but I'll turn it over to my colleague Tricia Dietz in case she has anything else to add.
Yeah, one of the other pieces of the J51 program is that it is for specific work that is done, so a project can also apply more than once, and so for different scopes of work. So that the application numbers do include also projects that have applied for more than one time.
Do you have data on how many properties received different rounds of J51?
We don't have that with us today.
Okay, so when we look at, I have some data that was shared here from 2014 to present in terms of the cost of the program, number of properties that are participating. These number of properties they could be inclusive of properties that received the benefit more than once?
Yes.
Okay.
And I would just add some color to that, I think this is one of the benefits of J51, right? That an owner that has an issue with one system today can focus on that one system. You know, the way that owners actually do work, they usually are not doing everything at once, right? The roof starts to have issues, they want to focus on replacement of the roof, right? The heating system is having some issues, they want to focus on the heating. Those may not happen at the same time. And so this is one of those programs where you might have somebody today apply for the roof and in 5 years focus on the heating system.
Got it. So in the proposed version, there's a $1,000 application fee, so an owner would have to pay $1,000 each time that they're reapplying. Got it.
Yes.
And so there's no limit on your reapplications if you're applying for different scope?
Nope. If the owner is interested in applying for discrete renovation projects, they can do so.
Got it. Thank you. So next, a few questions are more in vein of, more in line with some of the criticisms that we've heard from advocates regarding enforcement, as I mentioned in my testimony. So just for sake of background, how many buildings over the last 10 years, or how many properties over the last 10 years that were approved for the J51 abatement and exemption lost the tax benefit during the abatement or exemption period, and if so, why?
So, unfortunately, I don't have that information. Trish and I have been overseeing this program for a couple years. We cannot speak back. We do know that there have been some instances where we have known compliance issues of revocation. They've been fairly limited. We are actually, and I would say in part, like our enforcement options were really limited in the old program. It was really, if there was non-compliance, the option was revocation, right? The new program, we are actually really, one of the things we're most excited about is that there are a wider array of enforcement options available to the agency. So we not only have the ability to revoke, as we have had in the past, but we can also impose fines for non-compliance. We can require an owner to add affordable or rent-stabilized units, rather. We could add the time for compliance, right? So extend the period of compliance. We are starting to think about how we would actually operationalize some of those new enforcement provisions that we have. We've had the benefit in the last few years of having a compliance and enforcement team that we created within the Office of Development that's focused on other as-of-right tax exemption tools. And so we now have some models for how we would actually be able to operationalize compliance and review on a larger scale.
Got it. Can you just for a moment share a little bit more about that new function? So you said the Office of Development has a new compliance team. What kind of professionals do we have?
Yeah, so this originally came out of concerns around another as-of-right tax exemption program, 421A, where there were concerns that owners were getting a significant city tax benefit without complying with regulations. First and foremost, the biggest one being rent stabilization. And so the unit was created a little more than 5 years ago now in order to specifically ensure or set up procedures for complying with ensuring compliance with 421A. And that requires a fair amount of data coordination between HPD and HCR, right? HCR is the body that actually, where owners enter units into rent stabilization, they do their annual registration process. HPD doesn't collect that data separately. So for us to be able to monitor compliance, we have to have data sharing agreements with HCR. Get that data and then analyze it, compare it to the buildings that have received a benefit. So we have some experience with that now for 421A, and our hope would be to set up similar types of compliance regimes for J51 going forward. If we find, generally speaking, the way it works is that If we find non-compliance, once we've evaluated the data, we notify the building owner, and they have an opportunity to cure or address that compliance issue. Our primary goal is always to get the building owner into compliance with the requirements of the program. And if not, we would potentially then take enforcement action.
So just staying on this theme for a second, does HPD and DHCR, do you currently have a memorandum of understanding regarding sharing of information of rent registration?
We do, certainly, I can't speak to all of this with me, actually, this is where maybe Lucy Jaffe can speak.
Yes, and we can use it for enforcement purposes as one of the primary
Yeah.
uses of the shared data.
So in connection to J51, will the agency require or need any additional new different information from DHCR?
We do not anticipate that, no.
Can the council receive a copy of the MOU, just to understand?
I will have to talk to our legal folks, but happy to follow up on that.
Great. Thank you. Okay, jumping back. So can you help us understand, so you cited the 9,600 properties number for the last 15 years. Whether it's 15 years or a 10-year period, can you tell us what the cost of the J51 program has been?
Sure. So this is a little complicated, so bear with me for a moment, but on average, the annual cost over the last 15 years has been about $270 million a year. Keep in mind, that's not, there's a cumulative impact, right, of providing a benefit under a program like this, because you're talking about buildings during that 15-year period that received a benefit, right, applied and received a benefit back to like the 1990s, right? So, you know, you have some buildings that might be in the final year of a benefit period, some that are midway through, and some that are just commencing. So that is the overall cost of the city on average. There's been some ebb and flow in use of the program, as we discussed during the testimony. The program was used at a much larger scale in the 90s and into the early to mid 2000s, and then we've seen a very significant, I'd say pretty significant decline in usage since then. And we would expect, I think, going forward that costs will be on par with what we've seen in the past.
Do you have any explanations or understanding for why there was a decline in usage since the early 2000s?
I think there's a few things. There's probably some macroeconomic issues there, certainly, that impact use, right? For instance, can an owner get a low-cost loan to do the work, right? If they can, then they don't have any restrictions imposed by the city in participating in a city program, right? So they go out and get a loan, and they may then apply for an MCI increase in order to help cover some of the costs of the work. So there's certainly macroeconomic issues. I would also say that the program got stale. The MCI and the costs were because the process by which we were able to update them was extremely challenging, right? You had regulations, rules. Our intent going forward is that we lay out the methodology for updating the CRC in the rules. You know, we'll go through a public process. People will be able to see what that methodology is. But we outline the methodology, and then we can just update it as necessary without going through a brand new rulemaking process or something that would take a lot more work and would make us less nimble.
Thank you. Can you give us a breakdown of where previous J51 beneficiaries were located by borough? And I'm sure you don't have 51 council districts today, so can you follow up with 51 council district data?
I think we have information by borough. So this is the heaviest use of the program has been in Queens. The second highest use has been in Brooklyn, then the Bronx, then Manhattan, then Staten And interestingly, this is a program, we talk about this a lot as being a critical tool for lower cost rent stabilized housing in the city. It's also an extremely useful tool when it comes to helping low cost multifamily homeownership properties, so co-ops and condos, mostly cooperatives, and also some regulated housing. So for example, Mitchell-Lamas can qualify for a partial tax exemption under Article 2. That's a 10% shelter rent tax generally. They could actually apply for J51 to, if they're doing major capital improvements, to reduce their tax liability. So you see use in some parts of the city that you don't actually see participation in some other programs.
Thank you. That's helpful to understand. And can you share now about the characteristics of the buildings that were approved in the past year? So the age of buildings, if you, do you require information on financial distress from applicants, or did you in the past?
So we do not, this is not, because it's an as-of-right program, it's not a program where we're underwriting a benefit, right? So we have other programs like that where we're providing loans or discretionary tax incentive, and so we are structuring that financial assistance to address both the financial and physical needs. This is different in that an owner self-identifies as wanting and needing the assistance, and they apply based on work they are planning to do, and they complete that work, and then we process an application. There are requirements that I think speak to financial conditions within the building. So first, because this is a reimbursement program, the owner has to be able to actually secure some financing up front to do the work. That could be that they're getting a loan, a bridge loan, maybe they have some savings. So that's number one. Two, in order to be eligible for us, for the benefit of the end of the day, and for us to process the certificate of eligibility, the owner cannot owe the city for any municipal charges.
Yep.
So I think those two things speak to financial conditions, but it's certainly possible that owners are struggling with other things that we wouldn't see.
Got it. And I know in the new version, the last point that you mentioned is still in there about not allowing any debts to the city. So does that include just property taxes and sewer, or is that also violations and fees and other debts to the city?
Also, in order to be eligible, an owner cannot have any B and C violations with HPD, cannot have any DOB violations, cannot owe municipal charges. They could have a payment agreement. And that includes charges associated not just with property taxes, but programs like ERP have to be paid, or any relocation liens.
But isn't, playing advocate here, but isn't it possible or plausible that they are seeking the J51 incentive because they have certain B and C class violations that they want to address?
Yeah, so they could have violations that they are trying to address, and at the start of the work, they have those violations. In fact, I would encourage owners that have violations to consider this program. They don't have to clear them until they submit the application to us. They don't submit the application until the work is done. So at the end of the day, for us to issue a certificate of eligibility, they have to have cleared the violations. But at the start, they may actually be there. And so it's a weird process. Like, the way we typically operate is owner comes to us, they have a need, like for a loan, let's say. We review it, we underwrite it, we provide the loan, then they go do the work. This is the opposite. An owner deems that they're going to apply for J51. They've made an assessment. They notify the tenant. They notify the agency. They go out and do the work. When they've completed the work, then they submit the application to us.
So they have to notify HPD of their intent to use J51 prior to the commencement of the work?
Yeah, and this is one of the things that we're trying to clarify in the local law that isn't, I don't think, totally clear in state law, but they have to notify both tenants and they have to notify the agency of the intent to apply to the program.
Got it. They notify tenants of the intent to apply to the program or of the work?
Yeah, so they have to notify tenants that they intend to apply for J51
Got it.
specifically. And that has to happen in advance of starting the work.
Okay, so, okay, thank you. And just getting back to the question, was just seeking a breakdown of what are the characteristics of buildings that receive the incentive? So age of properties, regulatory status, whether they were in rent regulation or not, or they received other government assistance, and whatever we might know about building size and AMI of building residents.
Okay, so I think I have some of that information. J51 applicants, the buildings tend to be older. This is some of our oldest housing stock, oftentimes that's applying for the program. The median year built for applicants, the 9,600 buildings that were assisted in the last 15 years, the median year built was 1929. The median size was 42 units. The average was below that. We do tend to see a lot of smaller buildings that are using the program. And it was typically like a 6-story building. This is not an affordability program, it's a stabilization program. And there certainly are benefits from an affordability perspective for the residents because the cost of the work is not passed on to them, not passed on to future residents. But the primary requirement in the past for rental buildings has been rent stabilization or that they are otherwise regulated by the city. And the primary requirement for condos co-ops was that they had an assessed value under the cap or were otherwise regulated by the city. I don't think I have a breakdown of how many of the properties in the past were regulated affordable housing, but we do know Mitchell-Lamas, for example, have been main users, big users of J51. And there are some other regulated housing projects that used J51 in the past or may have had a partial benefit and then had additional work they needed to do, after we closed on a loan 10 years in and would apply for J51. Yes, I think that's what I know.
Okay, got it. And just on AMI's understanding, the previous version of the program, the agency did not collect this information?
Yeah, the only requirement was that the buildings had to be rent stabilized.
Got it.
And so there was, beyond that initial, eligibility review, there was no additional information about, rents that was required.
Okay, got it. Okay. I mean, just in terms of intent, I think the council would probably want to see the buildings that are benefiting from the J51 program, just targeting that incentive toward the most affordable, lowest income, the buildings that are housing the lowest income New Yorkers, right?
Yeah,
And that's absolutely the change that we've made here,
Yeah.
right? So under the old program, we wouldn't have collected rents because that was not part of it, but we are going to be targeting that. That's a huge part of the change for the same reason. So here we really do think we're targeting buildings that are serving lower income New Yorkers and that have lowest cost rents, helps us meet that goal of really helping preserve and keep those low cost buildings in good shape, and really targeting the benefit in a way it wasn't before.
Got it. 2 more, and then I'm going to turn it over to Councilmember Aviles for some questions. I just want to acknowledge that we've been joined by Councilmember Ressler. Okay. And so what percentage of buildings in the previous iteration of the program were rent regulated?
I believe about 40, again, in the last 15, this is a program that's been around for a long time. So in the last 15 years, I believe 40% have been rental properties and 60% have been co-ops and condos, mostly co-ops. There's very few condos that have participated.
Got it. And of the rental properties, do you have the breakdown of how many were under the rent stabilization?
The rental properties have to be either rent stabilized,
They had to be, okay.
right? Or they had to be regulated by the agency. So for example, Mitchell-Lama properties, if they're in the Mitchell-Lama program, aren't rent stabilized, but they are subject to other regulations that limit rents. So it was either rent stabilized or otherwise regulated.
And do you have that breakdown, rent stabilized or other?
I don't think I have that right now, but we could follow up to see if we have data on that.
Thank you. And recognizing the types of repairs that could be eligible for J51 is changing, could you share just whatever information that you can about the kinds of repairs that we were seeing under the old program?
Yeah, so the most common items were pointing, lintel replacement, windows, new roof replacement, and doors. Those were the most common.
Got it. And I understand that lead abatement work was eligible in the previous version. Did you see applications or how many applications that included lead abatement work?
Very, very, very rare.
So close to zero?
Yeah, I don't know how many exactly, but it was one of the least commonly applied for types of work.
And how does the agency understand that?
I don't really know if I have an explanation for that. I mean, I know that, there certainly are some buildings that still have lead. There's lead belts across the city with older housing stock. I don't really understand why people are not trying to take advantage of that, but it certainly has not been a main use of the program.
Are there other eligible expenditures that were underutilized in the program?
I mean, the big ones, oil tanks, mailboxes, compactors, lead work, and cogeneration, which kind of makes sense. And there's
What
not
was
a
the
lot
last
of
one?
buildings.
What generation?
Cogeneration.
Generation.
Yeah, there's not a lot of properties that have cogen, so.
Great. Okay, thank you so much. I'm going to turn it over to Councilmember Aviles, and if other colleagues have questions, I'll turn it over to them before coming back.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. I guess I wanted to follow up along the lines of the compliance elements. Can you explain to us how HPD verifies whether the landlords are keeping the units stabilized with the program?
Yeah, I was trying to explain a little bit earlier. That's been one of the things I think that has not, again, Trish and I have only been involved the last couple of years, but I don't think there's been great systems in the past. We do absolutely, from an eligibility perspective, focus on making sure that the project at the point in time they're applying, that they meet the eligibility requirements. So rent stabilization certainly was one of those things, clearing violations, all of those things that I mentioned earlier. I think given that we're going to have now that we have some models for how to do this for other as-of-right programs, and that we're going to have a much deeper bench of enforcement options, we're actually going through the process now. We're trying to figure out how to operationalize this, given the scale of the program, going forward. And so the model I think that is most closely resembles what we would consider here is what we do for 421A, which is that we review annual registration information. Again, that requires us to make sure that we can use the data in that way that we receive through HCR. But we do know that we have a model and systems in place elsewhere that we could look to.
Got it. So, so you do have currently an agreement with DHCR to share data?
Yes, we have a data sharing agreement for rent stabilized data, and one of the primary uses is for enforcement.
Great. And in terms of the unit that will be, I guess, conducting the enforcement and the reviews, is that a repurposed unit? Is this additional work for this group of people? And how many people will be allocated to this function?
That is a great question. We have a division. It's a small division within the Office of Development, mostly made up of attorneys and analysts that do the ongoing compliance work for as-of-right tax incentive programs. Most of the work historically has been around 421A. Now that we have a wonderful set of new programs and resources that the state legislature has recently authorized for the city, including 421A, 45X, and if council authorizes it, J51, we are evaluating resources for the team to see if we will need more going forward, and certainly would work that through with the Office of Management and Budget.
And how many people work in the unit?
I think there's, hang on, I have this data, 1 second. We have 16 staff.
Got it. I'm sure more work means more people. We want to fully, to keep the staff happy and also to make sure that we fully enforce, given the constant attacks and losses of rent-regulated units in New York City, and how important they are to our housing stock. In terms of the data that is being maintained, is there a list of units with either missing information or registration that you keep in order to triage or check into eligibility?
So at the point of application, the owner needs to, so going forward for the new program, the way this will work is the applicant decides they want to apply for J51, they do the work, they submit the application to us. Part of what they need to demonstrate is that they meet the eligibility requirements. For a rental building, that means they need to show that at least 50% of the units are rent stabilized, and that the rent for those units is below 80% of area median income. So we will not issue a certificate of eligibility without the owner being able to demonstrate that. Again, there's certainly some rental buildings where that's not the requirement. So Mitchell-Lama is being, I think, the first and foremost example, but generally speaking, that is the requirement.
And then what's the general term, thank you, the general term of the benefit? Is it annual or is it?
So the way it works is the owner will do the work. We'll have a certified reasonable cost schedule. So let's say somebody wants to do a roof. It'll say how much we're willing to reimburse. The actual reimbursement will be for the lesser of the actual cost of that work or what we have posted as the reasonable cost. And then once we've deemed the applicant eligible, they met the requirements, we issue the certificate of eligibility. They are eligible for an abatement of up to 70% of the work, okay? That is then, they can get up to 8 1/3 of that benefit annually for a term of up to 20 years. So it's 12 to 20 years, however long it takes to pay that out, basically.
Got it. And last question, Chair, if I may, just following up on the compliance piece.
Sure.
I think I know the answer to this, but I should ask it very explicitly. So do you feel currently that HPD has sufficient resources to do the appropriate enforcement for this program currently?
We are actively evaluating that right now because we now have more programs to oversee than we had in the past, right? Over the next 6 months, we are basically launching, 421A extension program. We have 485X, the new tax incentive for affordable housing. We have a commercial conversions incentive program. And then we have if the council authorizes it, J51. So there's a lot of new as-of-right programs, and so we are evaluating both our resources to administer those programs and the applications up front, as well as our compliance and enforcement resources. So I
And
can't
has-
say today.
Got it. And has HPD is actively pursuing additional staff lines from OMB for these programs, or operating under the assumption that the programs will be implemented under the current structure?
We aren't sure yet because we're still evaluating if we have the resources to do what we need to do. But we certainly, if we don't believe that that's the case, we will be working with OMB to figure out how we secure the resources.
Time is running out. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Aviles. I now want to turn it over to Councilmember Ressler.
Thank you so much. I say it at every hearing because it's very true, but we are really lucky in the City Council to have such an exceptional chair of our Housing and Buildings Committee, so thank you. Deputy Commissioner Darga, it's good to see you, and HPD team. I wanted to ask about Local Law 97. You know, I feel like over the years there's been different times where there have been more critics of J51, less, you know, where other items like 421A have taken up more energy and been the recipients of more criticism. I'm really hopeful that we can utilize J51 to help as much as possible with buildings that are struggling to comply with Local Law 97. And broadly, I feel like the administration has not done enough to make financial incentives available to buildings that want to comply with Local Law 97, and I feel like J51 should be a real opportunity for us to do so. So maybe just broad strokes, could you lay out how you believe J51 should help buildings comply with Local Law 97, and then I'd like to talk to you about some ways where I think we could and should go further.
Great. I actually think this is a very powerful program for building owners to comply with Local Law 97.
So help me out on the building owners, because what home ownership, what co-ops and condos are actually eligible for J51?
Yeah, when I say building owners, I also mean
Oh, you mean owners
co-op
of
and
rentals?
condos.
Okay,
Yeah.
you mean owners of rentals, of rental
Rentals
buildings?
or-
Got it.
yes.
Okay, because there's a very narrow slice of co-ops and condos that are actually eligible here.
So actually it's co-ops or condos with an assessed value below 45,000 a unit. So these are
Okay.
the low cost.
Got it. There's not a lot of buildings in New York City where a unit is worth $45,000.
This is assessed value, not market value.
Yeah.
And so these are lower cost homeowners, but this is a significant swath of homeowners have been using J51, as we testified before, even with slightly lower assessed value.
Even assessed values of $45,000 for a unit. I mean, how many units, how many co-ops and condos have assessed?
So
Do you have
we
a number?
actually think there are,
And we've had about 60% utilization of J51 historically with a lower
But I'm not,
assessed
sorry, I'm
value.
not asking utilization. I'm asking it's a pretty narrow universe of buildings where assessed value of a unit is $45,000.
so I actually think that is representative about a fifth of the co-op and condo buildings in terms of assessed value
In New York City,
in New York City.
20% of co-op and condo buildings have assessed
think
values
it
of
might be- I mean,
$45,000
I
per
think
unit or
it's-
less. That is the most shocking statistic I have heard in a very long time.
Okay,
I am not easily shocked.
Let me verify that, but
okay.
I do think we have that information, or maybe
All
we
right.
can
well,
get back to you in a second.
You can come back to me on it,
Okay.
but I still can't quite believe that. Is anyone with me? That's crazy. I mean, have you been to the 33rd Council District? Because, oh my gosh, I wish. But you keep, if you could, I didn't mean to interrupt you on a different
No,
tangent.
it's okay. So we actually, as Lucy mentioned, we actually have had pretty significant use by condo and co-op owners. This is, I really think, an amazing program for doing the major systems work that makes a huge difference when it comes to decarbonization of residential property in New York City. And particularly for buildings that have lower rents or do have lower assessed value, for the residents of these buildings, it'll make a big difference. So we do think that the main things that this can help with are going to be code compliant windows, heating and hot water systems, high performance heating equipment, including heat pumps, which also can help with cooling, high-performance hot water equipment, electrical upgrades, building insulation and air sealing. So a lot of the big system type work that is necessary to comply with Local Law 97. And we
Boiler replacement.
or sorry, not,
Right.
yes.
That would all be.
Heating systems, all
Totally.
of it, yes. So, and we've actually worked really closely with MOCJ, and I mean, I remember back in 2015, we were working with the predecessor to MOCJ, MOS, the Mayor's Office of Sustainability then, to think about J51 because we knew that the existing residential building stock in New York City was one of the biggest emitters, right? And that this was a program that touched a lot of residential property in New York City and could have a big impact. So we've worked really closely with that team to think about what are the eligible items, right, in order to help owners decarbonize their buildings. And I think one of the benefits of the structure that we've outlined here, where the CRC and the costs are, the methodology is outlined in rules, is that if MOCJ, if we realize there's something that we've missed in terms of a major item that would make a meaningful difference, we have the opportunity to potentially add it, right, by going through the process outlined in the rules. So we do think this is impactful. We've already started to think about, like, you know, how you do outreach to building owners, not just the traditional way about J51 and doing major kind of housing quality type improvements, but how maybe we work with the accelerator to make sure that when there's engagement around Local 97 or decarbonization work, that's another path that owners can find out about J51.
That was very much my next question, is how do we do a better job of informing building owners and co-ops and condos, because it sounds like there are a lot of buildings with $45,000 unit assessed values, much to my surprise. But how do we do a better job of educating and engaging homeowners about these resources and these opportunities? And you know, we've been hosting building sustainability kind of fairs in our district where we bring together contractors and all the different resources that could be available. We've been holding workshops for co-ops and condos and for building owners on how to try and help decarbonize your buildings. And I really think that we've got to, I actually just wonder if maybe there's in reverse, if anyone's applying for J51, is there any evaluation for Local Law 97 compliance that's considered as a part of their J51 abatement application, their progress toward compliance, any mandate or encouragement that they utilize the tax abatement to achieve those necessary goals? How do we reverse it that way to ensure that any building that's coming to HPD, HPD is saying back to them, we actually need you to do a Local Law 97 evaluation or assessment to make sure that you're doing everything you can to decarbonize? Because I agree, this is one of the best tools we potentially have to decarbonize buildings that really don't have the resources to do it on their own and need our help to make it happen. So is that something you all have considered? Am I thinking about it the wrong way?
Question. No, it's an interesting question, and that's actually what we do a lot in the other preservation programs that we administer, right? We've established an assessment methodology. All buildings go through that assessment, and it does take into account what is necessary from a decarbonization perspective. We have like high performance tracks we've laid out. Our chief sustainability officer is amazing, and she's done a lot to move us in that direction.
That's great.
Here, I think it's not really a mandate, right? A lot of these buildings are going to be required to comply with Local Law 97. A lot are not, right? So there are carve-outs to Local Law 97 for certain types of buildings that don't have to comply or have a much longer period to comply. So that may not be first and foremost, but regardless, what we've done is say,
But even if they don't have an immediate compliance requirement, we want them to
right,
decarbonize.
exactly. And that's why we have thought about the specifications. So you can't put a window in that's a single pane window.
Right.
We're not going to reimburse for that, right? We've thought about the specific specification that is required when you are replacing that system to make sure it's an efficient system. So even if a building owner is not thinking first and foremost about that, the program is designed to make that happen.
Yeah. I hear you, and I just wonder how we can do more, because we've got to shift the market in New York City to expanding the number of buildings, especially larger buildings that are actually utilizing heat pumps, that are actually decarbonizing, that are changing the way that they operate. And the J51 incentives should be a tremendous opportunity for us to get a whole lot more buildings to actually take this leap and to make this happen and make it more affordable for all of us to be successful with Local Law 97 compliance. So I just hope that we can continue to talk and explore together on how we can better, if not mandate, incentivize, encourage, facilitate Local Law 97 compliance through J51. And frankly, and this may be a less popular statement with some of my colleagues, I actually think that for local law, J51 could be a mechanism to consider Local Law 97 compliance for more buildings and expanding the eligibility for for J51 to help more buildings be able to affordably comply with Local Law 97. I think that's one of the things we have to seriously consider if there aren't other effective financial incentives being made available. So, but that's a conversation for another day, but I just think it's worth putting out there. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Ressler. Any other questions? Okay. I just first wanted to pick up on your question about assessed values, and I know you said, Deputy Commissioner, you would follow up, but can you just remind us of the relationship between assessed value and market value? The market value someone from the public would see on Zillow or Redfin?
So I'm not an expert in DOF valuation. I will just say that first and foremost, but there's market value out in the market, there's DOF market value, and then there's the Department of Finance's assessed value, right? So what we're talking about here is assessed value, which is certainly not the same thing as like if somebody's going out and selling their condo or co-op unit, what they potentially are going to get for it. So I can't speak to the methodology that DOF uses, I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, I know it's a fractional amount.
It is a fractional amount, which is why it seems shocking that you would have actually a sizable number of co-op and condo units with assessed value under $45,000.
And I'll just add, it's generally more stable. And so when we talk about sort of having programs that are really people can predict, right? If you think about it, market value changes much less predictably. And so there is a reason why some of these programs are designed around assessed value, though it doesn't always feel as clear to other folks.
Yeah. Not to shout out CLA, but can y'all phone a friend and just so that we can read into the record that definition of assessed value versus market value? Thank you. Okay. Got a whole color coding system to make sure I don't miss questions. Let's see if it works this time. Doesn't always. Okay, so going back to some questions about the previous administration of the program and then coming back into the current. So okay, so I did ask about the lead abatement repair. So you mentioned that the lead abatement repair was close like next to zero applications that came in, including lead abatement work. Is that also true after the new the new lead laws went into effect after 2019?
Yeah, it is true. And I mean, again, it's not clear why, right? You have the new lead laws that certainly impose additional requirements on building owners. You know, I think also at the same time that you have these new laws, we also had a real decline in J51 usage. Again, and I think this gets to like the cost schedule is stale, right? And not only that, but the program expired in 2019. People had to have completed work by mid-2022. And so it really is not an active program anymore. And so it's hard to tell how much of this is, you know, with the new lead laws, would there be more applicants? It's hard to tell because we're not working with a program that is really up to date.
Great. Okay. Thank you. I'm just reflecting that, I mean, in the new version of the program, as HPD is proposing to update the cost schedule, it would be very interesting to see, you know, if there is uptake for lead abatement work, especially because we hear so many complaints about how expensive that is, and you can cover up to 70% of the cost through a J51 incentive. Okay, so I asked a version of this already, but just to reiterate, HPD has no information about enforcement actions taken against J51 beneficiaries in the past 15 years?
We know that there was recent enforcement action a couple years ago against at least one property,
How recent?
just before the pandemic. It was a revocation,
A revocation.
yes.
Do you know the reason in that case?
The property was found to be ineligible for the benefit.
For what reason? Why were they ineligible?
I think we have information. Tricia, do you have information about the basis for that? If not, we can follow up if we don't have it right now. Maybe we can follow up.
Thank you. Do you have, whether through crosstabs or any other method, do you have information on how many tenant harassment or building condition complaints HPD has received during the last 15 years in buildings that have received the benefit or after the buildings have begun to receive the benefit?
Yeah, we don't have that. We don't have data on that. I mean, it's certainly possible. These are buildings that are older, so I'm sure there are violations that come up after we issue the benefit, and I would hope that those building owners, like they did the first time, would take advantage of the program if they need to in order to address the violations.
Okay. Will you track this information moving forward? Does the proposed legislation require tracking of this information moving forward?
I think we can look into whether that is possible.
You have a great compliance team that is going to grow from 14 people. It's going to be great.
Yes.
Thank you. And finally, on the retrospective look, can you share on HPD's work to monitor existing, repair conditions after the rehab work? Does HPD go and review or inspect the work that was promised?
Oh, so for our other programs, absolutely. This is different because the work has to be done before we grant the benefit. And the other programs that we administer in preservation, we provide a benefit, people do the work, and then they have to certify that the work is complete. Or we actually, if it's a loan, we are actually processing requisitions based on completion of the work. So yes, either way, there's a process. It's just, it differs a little bit, whether it's a loan or in this case, the abatement program.
So in J51, in the case of J51, does HPD physically go and inspect that the work was?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
We inspect to make sure. And in the new program, we're actually really excited that owners have to have completed they have to apply to us within 4 months of completing the work so that we can actually get out there pretty quickly after they've finished the work to verify that it has been done.
Okay. I'd like to acknowledge that we've been joined by Councilmember Feliz, and I'm going to turn it quickly over to Councilmember Ressler, who is unsuspecting, for a follow-up question.
I just had one question. I apologize. I think our committee counsel very smartly explained to me that the assessed value is just 6% of the market value. I think I don't know if that's right, but if you guys have...
I'd have to Google it.
All right. Okay. If you could confirm, it would be helpful. But the thing I wanted to ask is, I would love to work closely with all of the buildings in my district that are eligible for J51, especially because they have a lot of anxiety about Local Law 97, to help them comply, help them take advantage of this opportunity. Do you have a list of either co-ops and condos that have assessed values, $45,000 per unit by council district or by community district? Or you could give me all of Brooklyn and I could just sift through it. Or some other list of buildings that are J51 eligible that you can share with me?
I assume we could access that data, but I'll turn it on to my colleague.
For this, we look at publicly available Department of Finance records. So probably what we would do is we should work with you and with the Department of Finance to make that information available.
Okay, but you think it is feasible to provide me with a list, or,
I think it's public information, so we should be able to, but we should check with folks to make sure.
okay, it would be very helpful, and, you know, we're trying our absolute best to do very aggressive outreach to all of our property managers, all of our building owners, our co and condo boards, to help facilitate sharing of information about Local Law 97 compliance, and I think this is critically important. So the sooner that we could work together on that, I would be greatly appreciative.
That's great. That sounds wonderful.
Thank you,
We
Deputy
think this is a
Commissioner.
great program, and so we really do want to work with you guys to make sure there's many buildings and as many New Yorkers benefit from this as possible.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And I want to turn it over to Councilmember Feliz for a question.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Chair, for this hearing. And also thank you, HPD, for all the work you're doing, especially on the issue of home ownership. We are finally, after many meetings, conversations, and hearings, finally making some progress on the issue of home ownership, especially in the Bronx, and specifically in the Central Bronx, one of the areas in the city that has the lowest amount of home ownership in the city. So just curious, on the issue of home ownership, we have different programs, including the Open Door program, that relate to the construction of new buildings, which could potentially include home ownership. But just curious, are there any programs that relate or that involve converting existing buildings into buildings for home, that could offer home ownership? Let's say, for example, a bad landlord, whether private or let's say a nonprofit. I have a nonprofit in my district that has about 10 buildings, some of them with over 300 violations. So any programs that could potentially help turn those buildings into opportunities for home ownership for those tenants?
That's a good question. We don't have a specific program that does that, but if there is a building that where the residents are interested in doing that, and they are able to organize and meet the request. So for example, if it's a rent stabilized building, it would have to meet the requirements to convert under state law. If they're able to do that, we certainly would be open to that conversation. And we have heard from some of the organizations out there that work on homeownership projects that they are interested in working with residents to do that. And there's a couple projects that have come to us where that is what the residents would like to do, and we are supporting those projects.
Okay, good. And have we done that before, though? Have we actually completed any projects that we could use as a
Sure.
potential
The
model?
agency has a long history of actually doing this, but not as common on privately owned property, right? So there's like three parts to this. So let me, it'll take me a moment to explain it. But first, we are very concerned with maintenance of affordable rental housing in the city, given that there is not enough of it based on the demand, right? The vacancy rate for low-cost units is extremely, extremely low. So that's certainly something the agency is concerned about, and loss of that housing would be a concern to us. That said, we absolutely have examples. So for city-owned property, we have buildings that we foreclosed on, and as part of the Affordable Neighborhood Cooperative Program, have the ability to become limited equity cooperatives. And we have supported and put tremendous resources into making good on those promises. For properties that we have foreclosed on through third-party transfer, residents have the ability to petition there to become a cooperative going forward, and there have been buildings that have taken advantage of that in the past. So we absolutely do have some examples of this.
Okay, good. Well, look forward to continuing that conversation offline. We have this large nonprofit, Aquinas. I don't know if all of you have been working with them, but they have a large portfolio. Their top 10 buildings have over 200 to 300 violations each. That's completely unacceptable. If they can't manage the building, then they shouldn't have it. So we look forward to continuing those conversations with all of you, and seeing how we could create a building system that works for the tenants. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And actually, sorry, one more question. How long does that process generally last? Are we talking about a 2 to 3 year process, getting the tenants involved?
To
and then-
convert,
Yeah.
it can take a really long time. I mean, I think one of the challenges is that we don't want it to drag out, right? There are, we think, good practices when you have a rental property that is looking to convert. And these practices we have used in some of the programs I've mentioned, so in the Affordable Neighborhood Cooperative Program and TPT Tenant Petition. 80% of the residents have to be interested in converting. 80% of the residents have to be in good standing on their rental payments. And we need 80% of the residents to attend training. So there are some best practices that we've used. Sometimes residents are not able to meet those requirements, and so it can take a long period of time, depending on how much buy-in and how much residents are able to comply with that requirement.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilmember Felice. So I was doing some math in the background here. So if it is a 6% of the market value, then we're talking, and that's in 45%. So high school algebra, right, means a $750,000. But Councilmember Russell is not here. But $750,000 value, like market value, approximately for a condo or co-op unit, is what is eligible, roughly. So okay. So thank you, Councilmember Felice, and agree on all points. Just moving back to the, now looking forward into the new program. So has HPD conducted an analysis to determine how many buildings would be eligible for the new program?
We believe there are roughly, I don't think I have the building data, but I think there are roughly 700,000 residential units in New York City that we think could be eligible.
Got it. And do you have, can you break that down for us by co-op, condo, Michelamas, other?
So we believe about 70-ish% of those represents rental housing and 30% home ownership, so cooperatives or condos. Within that large universe, there are approximately 90,000 Michelama units in New York City, so that would be a subset of the rental and cooperative housing.
Got it. And what about just rent stabilized at the affordability levels defined in the bill?
So the requirement is that the buildings have to be at least 50% rent stabilized, and the rents in those units have to be below 80% of area median income, which I believe is about $2,300 for a one-bedroom.
It's an and, it's not an or?
It's an and, rent stabilized, and the rents need to be below 80%.
And so how many units in the city have 50% rent stabilized units and are renting for under?
So that is what we believe. So that's 700,000 of potentially eligible units, includes the universe of what we believe are potentially eligible rent stabilized housing. That being said, an owner that doesn't meet the 50% requirement today could, going forward, say, I would like to qualify for J51. I will enter some units into rent stabilization.
Okay.
If I may, of that estimate, what I think you're asking, council member, about 360,000 is our estimate. So about half of what we're talking about are rent stabilized units.
And do you have a sense of how many properties that corresponds to?
We don't actually have building level data today. We had been focused on looking at this at a unit level of measurement for a long time, so it would take us a while to look at it, to change that in terms of buildings. So we'll have to get back to you on that.
I believe in y'all. Believe in you. Okay.
I mean, I think it's, one way to think about it is that if the future use is similar to past use, the average building size in the last 15 years is 31 units, and the median is 42. So that gives maybe an approximate sense of the number of buildings that we're talking about.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you. Do you anticipate any differences in where applicants will come from in terms of geography?
I think I'll turn it over my colleague. I mean, I think we do expect that past usage is probably a decent indication of future. That being said, now that the requirement is that 50% of the units need to be rent stabilized and that the rents need to be below 80% AMI, that may limit participation of some buildings where the average rent stabilized rent was above that. Also, the co-op condo assessed value is slightly higher, so there may be some buildings that were not eligible historically that will now be eligible.
Got it. And sorry, clarifying question on the affordability restriction. Is it 100% of the units must rent at under 80% of AMI?
50%. So 50% of the residential units have to be rent stabilized and have rents below 80% of area median income.
Got it. Okay. And the rest can be market?
Yes.
Got it. And you mentioned earlier, but just to say again, what's the projected cost, the projected annual costs for the program?
This is where it gets a little tricky. We think it's going to be similar to the past, but there are a couple changes that's somewhat hard to predict. We hope the CRC schedule will be more tuned to actual costs going forward, right? So that means that the costs we're willing to reimburse will be slightly higher. At the same time, we are no longer, this program does not offer the exemption, and the exemption actually drove a significant amount of the cost in the past. We think those things probably offset, and so the cost, per unit, let's say, is probably on par, which I think that was a little bit over $7,000 per unit. But we don't know exactly until we put it in practice.
I saw that there were some years where the average cost per unit was closer to 10,000. Do you know why that would have been? So in 2018, 2019, 10,200, 2020 was 10,600 on average.
Is that, so you're looking at the average cost for all properties or those that
Average
receive
cost
the
for
benefit?
all properties receiving the J51.
Um,
Sorry, the cost to the city for for providing the incentive.
For all properties in a given year. Yeah. So there's a couple of things that could impact the cost per DU. One, building size. The larger the buildings are, generally the lower the cost per unit, because this is a program that focuses on major building systems. So if you have a 10-unit building putting a boiler in versus a 30-unit building putting the boiler in, the cost per unit, the system is the same, but the cost per unit is certainly less for the larger building. Second, I think the cost in aggregate for the city is a function of also how many buildings have the benefit in a given year, right? So what we saw is in the old program, the benefit was for 14 or 34 years, up to 14 or 34 years. And so in the in the 1990s, we were granting benefits, or early 2000s, where there was huge usage of J51. Those buildings were still getting benefits a few years ago. So it's a little bit of a function of how many benefits were granted in the past, as well as the characteristics of the buildings in a given year.
And so that's helpful to understand. So we've been talking about the size, like the cost to the city, the annual cost to the city, but in terms of the average benefit to a unit, do you have that, like over the lifespan of the program?
So,
or like their duration in the program?
That's actually an interesting question. I'm not sure if I have exactly that data. We could think if we could get it to you, but I do know like the general, the cost of the systems that we have approved varies by size of the property. So smaller buildings, for example, the average cost over the recent period has been about $10,000 a unit, whereas the larger buildings have been somewhere between, just over $1,000 to $10,000. That's for the like work we're reimbursing for, so the benefit is stretched over a period of time. And they also qualified for the exemption in the past, so that's where it gets complicated.
Got it. In the new program, is there a difference in the time frame of the benefit versus the time frame for rent regulation?
So the requirement for rent regulation is for the duration of the benefit.
Okay.
And that is between 12 and 20 years.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Does HPD have a way of knowing, I think I know the answer to this, but does HPD have a way of knowing what is the status of financial reserves in buildings?
In
asked?
J51, no. In other programs we administer, yes. If we are a lender, we do require reserves for projects, and we also, and actually, where we're providing a discretionary tax benefit, we require reserves. And we often, as a lender, either hold the reserves or have designated a servicer to do so. And so we have visibility into what resources the property has.
Thank you. But citywide, we don't have anything via the HVS or the RGB or any other public source?
Sorry, what was that?
Citywide estimates of building reserve situations and
I don't think we have a way to answer that question. Lucy also just clarified something for me. The benefit period and the restriction period for rent stabilization are not exactly the same.
The restriction period is 15 years.
It's 15 years.
15?
Yes.
And the benefit period?
It could be less.
Right, so that, as Kim explained before, we're paying out the benefit, abating the taxes over a period of time, and that will depend on an owner's individual tax liability and how long that will take, but it will be up to 20 years. Many of these units obviously are permanently rent stabilized, so some of that is a different calculation.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
And no, we don't unfortunately have the ability through the New York City Housing and Vacancy Survey to get that building level data, and I don't know of another source through which we could reliably get it, but that might be a question for other city agencies such as the Department of Finance.
Okay. Smaller properties. So smaller properties have a more difficult time. These repairs on a per unit basis, as you mentioned, are more expensive. Does HPD have planned any additional outreach, any extra resources, special resources to reach these smaller properties?
We definitely, there's a regular outreach that the agency does through our Office of Neighborhood Strategies and to some degree through our enforcement teams as well. And we will absolutely continue that work, the resource fairs, the property education clinics, et cetera, and attending events. I think we are certainly open to discussion if we think there's other ways that we can get the word out. I would say in addition to all of that, we're in the case, again, the fact that like J51 also helps with decarbonization, we are trying to think about other ways that we can get to owners that may not just be through HPD and through, housing quality related issues. And so trying to figure out how we could use the accelerator potentially as well.
Got it. And what is the minimum threshold? How many, what's a minimum unit count for an eligible property?
Multifamily buildings.
So 6 plus?
No, 3 plus.
3 plus, okay. Okay. So then the accelerator and local law 97 sort of outreach doesn't really help with reaching those folks, right?
Not the really small ones. Certainly that's not a target for Local Law 97, but there's technical assistance that's still available outside of Local 97.
And I think as Councilmember Ressler was mentioning, you all have deep knowledge of buildings in your district that might be in need and eligible, and so certainly partnering with you all to help whatever resources that we can make available to also sort of extend our reach that way would certainly be really helpful, because yes, there are buildings who are eligible for J51 who aren't normally used to working with HPD.
Got it. Thank you. And is there outreach planned in connection with the passage of J51?
I mean, well, assuming council authorizes, yes, we are going to have to get the word out because it has been a while. So we are doing, we're certainly doing some communications related work around the other as of right benefits, and this is certainly one of the programs we will be doing that for.
Got it. What metrics of success will HPD use for J51 program?
If we see an increase based on recent usage, I think that will absolutely be a success. That we've seen a real decline, and I think given the fact that this program benefits the property from a housing quality perspective, helps with decarbonization, and also means that the cost of those improvements is not passed on to residents. It's a really critical tool.
Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Councilmember Feliz for another question, and I'll come back.
Thank you. Thank you again, Chair. Going back to the topic related to homeownership and also repairs cases against landlords. So again, Aquinas Housing in my district, they have about 40 buildings, if I'm correct. Their worst building has about 350 violations. Their second worst building, about 280 violations. Their third worst building, the same amount, about 280 more violations. So just curious, how long does a general 7A proceeding take to litigate and fully resolve from beginning to end? And I know it ranges, I was a tenant lawyer, depending on, but generally.
Yeah, so I oversee the financing programs, not the enforcement programs at HPD, so I can't really speak to the 7A process. I do know that the agency is working very closely to monitor that portfolio, and including with lenders. And this is across both the asset management team and the development team, to try to figure out how do we stabilize operations there.
Okay. Have we ever seen 7A proceedings lead to the conversion of homeownership programs in these buildings that are grossly mismanaged by landlords, or different processes not related to each other?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly don't know the full universe of 7A buildings, so I can't speak to that. I know some 7A buildings have ended up in third-party transfer in the past, and those buildings have had the ability to petition. Outside of that, I don't really have knowledge of that issue.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Feliz. Okay, some more specific questions. So the new benefit is an abatement, not an exemption. Is HPD confident that the new structure will be a sufficient incentive for owners to undertake rehab at their properties?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things and maybe Lucy can step in a second. So we think there's really, for rent-stabilized housing, there are a couple ways to finance improvements, right? One, the main one today is that an owner goes out and finances the works. Hopefully they can secure financing in a higher interest rate environment, or they have some resources themselves, and then they could apply for an MCI increase, right? The MCI increases are certainly more limited than they have been in the past, but that still is a way in which an owner could recoup some of the costs of the investment. J51 provides an alternative to that. And we do believe that providing a benefit for 70% of the cost of the work and having the owner realize a benefit of 8 1/3 of that from 12 to 20 years will be a significant benefit, and we think competitive with the alternative.
Got it. We were talking about this internally, so 8 1/3, that means that's what percentage of the cost you can recoup on any given year?
Yes.
In your taxes? Okay. Good job.
One more note about the exemption. The exemption was really unpredictable. People did not know at the outset whether they would receive it, whether they would qualify. So it wasn't really something enticing people to do it. So that's sort of a long way of saying, in addition to the fact that the exemption wasn't luring people in, we do think that the abatement will be will provide an incentive. People will want to participate in this new program.
Thank you. In addition to local law 97 related work, are there other new categories of work that are going to be eligible for J51?
I think the major systems work that has been there, that has been commonly used by building owners will remain. I think what we've been looking to do is make sure that the requirements for the replaced system are also efficient, meaning you can't do a single pane window, right? Like that's a very good example. When you're doing the roof, we're looking at insulation as well. So it's really additive, but the big systems that building owners have that they have to replace or repair over a long period of time will remain.
Got it. Thank you. So going back to the questions that Councilmember Vilas was asking around rent regulation, so moving forward, and you mentioned about the 421A compliance program, but can you tell us a little bit more about what they do? So are they requesting information from owners on a regular basis? Are they share information about, tell us information about what the state is sharing through the MOU, which you may or may not be able to get me a copy of? Just a little bit more about that piece of it.
I mean, the big thing that we're looking at, so again, this a little bit different because the example we're working from is a slightly different program with different requirements. But the basic information is, are the units rent stabilized as they are required to be, right? And that is fundamentally for like a rent stabilized building in J51, that is the requirement, right? So that's the big thing. Are they entering the units into rent stabilization annually? And is it, in this case, if it were J51, is it at least 50% of the units?
Mm-hmm. And how often does HPD receive data from DHCR?
Yes, thank you.
So we receive that data. I just jumped to answer it and now I'm pausing. So there's multiple methods by which we actually receive this data. We can access it sometimes, some of it through live systems, and then we actually also get an annual feed or drop. My research team is sitting here cringing, watching me mess up how to exactly describe this, but we can access enforcement data on a regular basis.
Okay. So there have been several examples of J51 tenants suing because they haven't had coverage of rent regulation. So is that something, is there, just in terms of mechanism and how HPD would know to check, is that something that tenants are calling to 311 and then you have the ability to see the information in real time?
Yeah, so we certainly can do that. That's interesting. I need to think about like a mechanism to get complaints. I'm not sure that that's really existed the way you're talking about it right now in the past. But it's an interesting idea. Complaint-driven enforcement has probably been the main way that we have functioned in the past. What we're talking about is like thinking about now if there's also more proactive ways that we can monitor. One of the things that has changed, I mentioned that like this has much broader options for enforcement, in addition to the agency being able to enforce and having a range of mechanisms, you know, imposing fines and extending time period and other provisions. There's an option for private right of action by the resident as well. So not that we would rely on that exclusively, but it is another tool by which we can hold owners to complying with the requirements of the program.
And I'll just add, you know, I think because there are certainly enforcement efforts that we do, we've been talking about that today, I just don't think that HPD necessarily gets a ton of those calls through 311, since I think a lot of tenants think to call HCR or the state, since if they're concerned about their rent stabilization status. So I think it's a number of, on any of these enforcement actions, a mix of what the state is doing and what HPD is doing proactively, and all that's really important for us and something that we think we can really build on with these new enforcement tools.
What does HPD do today if you receive rent regulation complaints? Do you just tell people to call the state?
Well, we might, to the extent we get them, they could be for a wide range of reasons, and we might not have any access or relationship to that building or access to that information that we can share with the public. So yes, certainly if 311 were to receive a call or something were to someone were to reach out to HPD on this, typically that would be a state enforcement issue.
Okay, so when you talk about the MOU that you have with DHCR that allows HPD to act on data for enforcement purposes, it is specifically on the universe of buildings with which HPD has a relationship? Regulatory agreements, okay, got it.
Right, we would not be able to, we don't have broad-scale enforcement authority around rent stabilization generally, so we wouldn't be able to take action in a case where HPD is not otherwise involved.
Got it, thank you. Is there any way that HPD will be keeping track of apartments that become vacant during the J51 abatement period?
No, I don't. I mean, again, if we can figure out ways to operationalize in review of rent stabilization data, it's certainly somebody's registered vacancy at a moment in time, and that would show up. But outside of the moment in time the data captures, there's not way for the agency to monitor that.
Okay, so something like checking on the affordability levels and rent regulation, rent stabilization status, that's something that's gonna happen in the initial application and not again?
So the initial application, all of the eligibility requirements need to be met, including the rent stabilization requirement and the requirement for rents to be under 80% of area median income for at least 50% of the units. What we are trying to figure out is how, given the scale of the program, how to also think about operationalizing ongoing some monitoring of the primary requirements of the program. So, you know, the main requirement, again, for rent stabilized buildings is rent stabilization.
Okay, thank you. And when you say that you are trying to figure out how to operationalize that, is that are we trying to work this out in the legislative discussions, which I would hope so, and I definitely would want to see, or is your current proposal to do that via rules?
I think we would have to talk internally and with our legal team to figure out what makes sense.
Okay. Sorry, everybody thinks it's a good time to call me, so I'm gonna put my phone on Do Not Disturb. We're talking about J51 here, okay. Okay, so the relationship between MCIs and J51, how would HPD and DHCR prevent property owners from simultaneously receiving both benefits?
So there's actually a requirement, I mean, HCR is notified if a building receives J51 for particular work.
What do they do with that information?
I don't think I can answer for HCR, but maybe Lucy has a sense.
We can't speak to their individual systems, but they will not issue an MCI if J51 has been applied for that work.
Now, this isn't new to this legislation, so do we have any information about how this has taken place in the past? How many buildings have applied to HCR for an MCI while receiving the benefit?
So it actually is.
It's different.
It is
yeah.
new. It's different.
Yeah.
You were able to apply for partial for the amount that was not covered by J51 before. Now it's just entirely off the table. So that is new and something that we are excited about. And while we are not aware of that as an issue in the past. The newer system is even cleaner, and so we don't expect there to be a lot of issues with that.
And you've had conversations with our partners at HCR, and they're ready, willing, and able to work to decline these kind of applications?
Yes.
Okay. Good. Thank you for putting that on the record. What about individual apartment increases? Is there any relationship between J51 and IAIs?
The J51 is intended for major capital improvements, which are building-wide improvements. So that is not interior apartment work. Other than there may be a couple things where there's overlap. I would have to verify this, but for example, like apartment doors are eligible through J51. Windows are also, you have to get into the unit to install a new window. So I'd have to double check if any of those are eligible for IAIs.
Okay, got
But
it.
there should not, the intent of J51 is not to do apartment renovations.
Okay. But there's a per unit, right, there's a per unit cost requirement of $1,500, and so you can reach part of that, right, via apartment doors, windows. I guess, has there been any thought by the agency on just potential double dipping between gaining an IAI and benefiting from J51?
So I want to reframe a little bit the per unit requirement. That really functions to make sure there's sort of a minimum scope of work versus that there is necessarily going to be work done within the units. We really don't see that often as part of J51. And with an IAI, for example, you need a tenant's consent if they're in place. So there are a number of ways in which these programs deviate. We don't have any reason to think that there is going to be overlap or sort of a workaround using IAIs, but we can certainly talk more to our partners at HCR and just make sure that we're not missing something here.
Got it. Thank you. Yep, I would love to hear the follow-up on that assessment. For co-op and condo properties that will not be eligible for the J51 abatement, are there other city programs that are available to them?
So HPD's work focuses primarily on affordable properties. So most of our other work on the incentive side is for HDFC cooperatives and for Mitchell-Lama cooperatives. Another co-op or condo building that is not regulated through one of those programs or a similar program is generally not available for other forms of assistance from HPD. That being said, that there are other programs that may benefit those properties. So for example, a lot of the decarbonization and efficiency programs that exist today are more widely available, solar credits, for example. I would certainly encourage those buildings to look at some of the other programs and speak to the accelerator folks if that's the type of work they're interested in doing.
Got it. Okay, thank you. How are the enforcement mechanisms in this iteration of the program different from the previous version?
These are much more expansive, and let me just pull it because there's a long list of things here. So historically, our main enforcement option was around revocation, and now there's a lot of interim other options that we have available to us. So we can revoke if the owner fails to comply with rent stabilization requirements, engages in tenant harassment, or commits other substantial violations of the program requirements. HPD can also, though, extend the restriction period, increase the number of qualifying rental units, impose a fine, or appoint a receiver. And we also, there is ability to look at criminal liability for unauthorized uses of the property, which could include renting units through Airbnb, for example. Also possible misdemeanor with possible fines of 2 times of the value from unauthorized use or 90 days imprisonment. And we also now have, there's an ability for a tenant right of private action as well.
Thank you. We like to hear these things. In connection to the tenant right of a private right of action, is there assistance or help that HPD is going to be providing for residents that want to pursue a private right of action?
That is something that I certainly have not considered in the past. I think, we have other teams at the agency that oversee programs to help tenants organize and to advocate, as well as there's some other agencies that do that work. So I think we could think about whether there's ways to connect those resources to these buildings.
But I think part of that's why we do have the private right of action, so it is something that a tenant, for whatever reason, if they do not want to be waiting on or working through government channels, can avail themselves of. But primarily, we're focused on handling it through our enforcement tools, and we plan to be assertive and aggressive with that, so hopefully most tenants won't be relying on that anyway.
And just in the case that a tenant is relying, what kind of complaints would they be bringing to the courts under this private right of action?
I think one of the main reasons and the ways that we think that this will be used is when there is other litigation regarding a tenant's rent. And so I think one of the ways that this can be used is to also challenge the rent that is being requested of the tenant if it's not in accordance with the J51 requirements. So I do think we would be helping to provide information about what the J51 requirement would be in that case, but that this could be added in addition to the other types of violations being imposed against the owner.
Got it. Thank you. Is HPD going to conduct outreach to inform tenants of this new right, or I guess inform tenants or inform organizations that you work with?
It is part of the lease. There is part of the notification requirement is that the tenant was notified that the project is receiving J51. So they will know that they have J51 applied, and they also are required to be notified of their rights under J51.
Okay. Got it. Thank you. Yeah, it's one of my gripes with Article 11s is that tenants don't know that their building is receiving this benefit.
We do require notification, just so you know.
Okay, thank you. Could talk more about that because
Okay,
people
good.
don't know. Maybe that's just an existential New York City problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so almost through with my list, and my colleagues have left, so that means we're almost through. So the usual HPD hearing with me. Thank you, sorry. So regarding the checklist that requests additional information or documentation, can you provide an example of a situation where the checklist would be used? What would be included in the checklist? And is this an existing document that HPD has?
So I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Tricia.
Yeah, sure. So I think when we review an application, we're taking a look at all of the different eligibility requirements and the documentation that's provided. And when we review that, there are oftentimes questions that come up that have to do sometimes with inconsistency across documents, whether or not the documents are reflective of the work. And I think that those types of questions are then provided within what we would call a checklist that's then sent to the owner or the filing representative to then respond to those questions. Within that kind of process where we go back and forth to get all of the information necessary before we can approve a project.
Got it. Okay, thank you. So it's like you're essentially following up on inconsistencies.
Right.
Okay. Okay, regarding the certified reasonable costs for alterations, what methodologies will you use to determine these reasonable costs?
We will use a system called RS Means that is really the market equivalent of really a system that estimates construction costs. And so that is what we will use to really establish what those costs should be.
One piece of feedback that we received from advocates prior to the hearing is concerns about how regularly the cost schedule will be updated. So the bill right now, I believe, says just regularly, but what's the intent here?
Yeah, we definitely want to do it more regularly than it has been in the past. I think we're going to try to do it as often as makes sense, right? In the last couple years, for example, costs went up very quickly. And so being able to update more regularly would have been useful in terms of helping owners actually be able to address the work There have been times when costs have not changed very much at all, so going through an entire process to update would not have made sense. So I think it is really as needed and as appropriate based on what we're seeing in terms of construction costs.
Okay. I have, one of the organizations has recommended an annual check-in, so we can discuss that further and just to make sure, you know, Kim Darga is there today and this team is there today, but we want to make sure that we stay on top of J51 and make sure that it's an attractive incentive. Right. Okay. Okay. I've asked a lot of these, so I'm trying not to duplicate questions. Okay, the application for the program requires evidence of eligibility as is satisfactory to HPD, showing the cost of construction. Can you provide examples of what HPD considers to be satisfactory evidence of eligibility?
Yeah, I think we have actually a couple different types of evidence that we would accept. One is, you know, a statement from a CPA that lays out the different costs associated with payments made for work.
I'm sorry, from who?
A CPA.
A CPA, okay.
But we also accept receipts, the invoices for work that's paid. And so we kind of compile a lot of different documents in terms so that we can understand and make sure that the work that's being inspected represents the work that is being provided by the owner, and that we can kind of come to what those costs are. And then I think, as Kim kind of described, we take the lesser of the actual costs and that certified reasonable cost.
Thank you. HPD, when will HPD conduct inspections to ensure that the claimed work is completed and for the claimed cost?
Yeah, so after a project provides an application, that work has already been completed, and so that's when we, you know, would look at the eligibility of the project first, so we're using resources but then after that, we would schedule an inspection for an inspector to go out to the site to physically see the work that's been done.
Got it. Thank you. And in terms of affordability, it's everything below 80% of AMI, because I saw that there was a change from 20 to 80% of AMI to 30 to 80% of AMI.
Not familiar with the change that you're referring to, but 50% of the units have to be at rents that are affordable to households earning 80% of AMI.
So including 20% of AMI?
Yes, up to and including, yes.
Okay, good. Got it. And these affordability levels, it's just looking at the rent rolls. That's the way that you confirm it. It's not that they're necessarily participating in any particular program?
Registration. It's the registration data. Yeah, it's actually the registration data.
Okay. One clarifying question I had, I saw that there is a portion, a line that says the abatement does not reduce taxes on the land. So is this a change in the formula from the previous version of land and improvements to only improvements?
I believe that this is referring to the fact that it is an abatement, so the abatement is applied after taxes are imposed upon a property. Then that's when the abatement is then taken. So it's not an exemption anymore. Okay. So it's not reducing the tax bill. It's occurring after the tax bill has occurred.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, and you have answered these earlier, so. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Sergeants will handle that. Thank you, sergeants. Okay, HPD, thank you so much for this information. You know, I just want to make sure that in my role as housing chair and with my colleagues in the council, we just want to make sure that the city is getting bang for our buck, that you have the enforcement mechanisms in place needed to ensure that the program is administered as it should be. So these questions the questions that you have answered have been very helpful, and I look forward to further discussion on J51. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will be moving to public testimony shortly. Just give us one moment to switch gears. I will now open the hearing for public testimony. I remind members of the public that this is a formal government proceeding and that decorum shall be observed at all times. As such, members of the public shall remain silent at all times. The witness table is reserved for people who wish to testify. No video recording or photography is allowed from the witness table. Further, members of the public may not present audio or video recordings as testimony, but may submit transcripts of such recordings to the Sergeant at Arms for inclusion in the hearing record. If you wish to speak at today's hearing, please fill out an appearance card with the Sergeant at Arms and wait to be recognized. When recognized, you will have 2 minutes to speak on today's hearing topic, J51 and Intro 654. If you have a written statement or additional written testimony you wish to submit for the record, please provide a copy of that testimony to the Sergeant at Arms. You may also email written testimony to testimony@council.nyc.gov within 72 hours of this hearing. Audio and video recordings will not be accepted. I will now call the first panel. Okay. I'd like to call up Amber Nicosia, Emily Klein, and Sharon Brown. Good morning. You may begin when ready. Sergeants, you ready? Okay.
Good morning, or I should say good afternoon, Chair Sanchez. My name is Amber Nicosia. I'm honored to be the board president at Penn South. We have 15 buildings and roughly 5,000 New Yorkers as residents. We are the largest affordable limited equity housing community left in New York City. We are regulated by HPD, and we are very proud of our affordable status, particularly at this time when the city is seeing a housing crisis. One of the ways that we're able to remain affordable is through programs like the J51. This program is vital to Penn South and all of our sister co-op communities, and I urge the council to vote in support of the Affordable Housing Rehabilitation Program. The purpose of J51 is to assist owners of aging buildings in desperate need of pre-approved repairs, such as lead paint abatement, asbestos removal, and roof replacement. These are vital to the health and safety of our residents. In this way, J51 has been a major success in preserving multifamily housing, and at a small cost to the city, since the work is performed by the private sector. Built in 1962, Penn South's aging infrastructure requires constant capital improvements to comply with local laws and maintain our property. Losing J51 has been a severe blow to our economic well-being. In 2017, HPD promised us that underground utilities and submetering programs would be in the new J51 extension. And here we are halfway through these projects. These are multi-million-dollar projects for which we've budgeted to have the abatement available to us. This year, we've been forced to raise maintenance due to COVID, local laws, and the extreme cost of insurance and utilities. Please help us maintain affordable housing through this program.
Thank you so much for testifying.
Great. Thank you, Chair Sanchez and council members of the Committee on Housing and Buildings. My name is Emily Klein. I'm a Senior Policy Associate at the Community Preservation Corporation, a nonprofit based in New York City. CPC is honored to provide testimony today in support of intro number 654. New York City is one of the oldest housing stocks in the country with a median building age of 90 years. These pre-war rent-stabilized buildings are some of the last and largest remaining sources of the city's affordable housing, multifamily rental housing stock, and many of these buildings need major capital investments to address essential repairs and renovations. This need is especially acute for aging multifamily buildings with less than 50 units, as they tend to operate on thin margins and are occupied by low-income tenants. As we just heard from HPD, J51 was a key strategy for the second half of the 20th century in modernizing New York City's rental housing, and its expiration has left building owners without the necessary financial tools to offset the major cost of capital improvements. The new J51 incentive is structured as a tax abatement with up to 70% of the certified reasonable cost of construction, and this incentive includes an updated certified cost schedule that accounts for the current cost of materials and labor, in addition to modernized scopes of work that include electrification and decarbonization items, both of which will help buildings comply with Local Law 97. While Intro 654 currently states that the CRC schedule shall be, quote, updated as necessary, we urge the Council to amend this language to require the relevant city agencies to review and adjust the CRC schedule annually or index rates to keep pace with inflation and price changes. After successful passage by the Council, we at CPC stand ready to support HPD in crafting program guidelines concerning eligibility and proof of completed work. To maximize impact, these program parameters must be thorough enough to discourage abuse, but not so burdensome as to discourage adoption. In conclusion, Intro 654 meets the needs of our current market and moment, and we urge the Council to pass it with minor edits incorporated. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And welcome to testifying at the Council. Thanks, Emily.
Hello, my name is Sharon Brown. Good afternoon, good morning. I am very disgusted about the housing situation that affects the police, the firemen, and the military. A lot of policemen and military and even firemen are undercover. So when they are getting poor housing, it's not just affecting regular people. You have people that are coming into the housing situation who are undercover, and they get to see how regular people are treated. So they come in a normal uniform or normal clothing, not in uniform. And these undercovers see how people are treated when they file applications and things like that. I believe that housing should not have so many requirements. Mental health system forces people into nursing homes after robbing them, after taking their property, after attempting to debilitate them. Now, I will say the Bible does not concur with mental health as existing. King David pretended to be mentally ill. You can read the story in the Bible where he was with an opposing king and they were sadistic in nature, so he pretended to be mentally ill. Many of the people that are undercover are pretending or whatever to be mentally ill. Some of the people that are doing things in the stations and things like that, you don't know who are undercover. So when we are declaring people are mentally ill, you don't know if someone just saved somebody else's life who was undercover. So when we are declaring people mentally ill and putting them into housing that are debilitating them, you have undercovers in there too, and they're calling them mentally ill also, and they're trying to stop the abuses and things that are happening there. You have people who are underpaid in New York City and in America. You have teachers, you have housing, different things, but they do it across the board. They do it to teachers, housing, students, and so it's across the board. It's not racist that, sorry, just as the last thing, it's not racist that the minimum is being paid to everybody. They do it to military, to teachers, to students, and also to housing. So it's across the board. It's not racist.
Thank you for your testimony.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, we will now be moving to a Zoom panel. I'll first call up Adam Roberts, then Ed Yeager.
Thank you for holding this hearing today. I am Adam Roberts, Policy Director for the Community Housing Improvement Program, also known as CHIP. We represent New York's housing providers, including apartment building owners and managers. We appreciate that the Council is advocating for J51, in large part because of the financial crisis hitting rent-stabilized housing. Rent-stabilized housing represents 40% of rental housing in the city, which is around 1 million units of housing. However, we have strong concerns that this new J51 program will not be usable for most buildings with rent-stabilized units. Most glaringly, the bill requires that owners certify the income of tenants in order to qualify for the program. Owners cannot mandate that their tenants provide updated salary information. Without this information, there's no means of proving that tenants fall within the necessary AMI marketing bands to qualify for J51, even if the legal rents fall into those bands. The AMI bands themselves are also overly restrictive. The bill requires that at least 50% of units in a building rent within affordability bands from 20% of 80% of AMI to 30% of 80% of AMI. For a single person, this range is $17,392 to $26,088. This would mean that affordable rents would be around $500 per month. No rent-stabilized building could operate with rents so low. The average operating cost for a rent-stabilized unit is $1,164. With the rents required to qualify for this new J51, a building would need to be losing $664 in at least half of its units. While there is a substantial government assistance option to qualify, this too is overly restrictive. The definition of government assistance is a regulatory agreement of at least 15 years. This means that accepting voucher holders or having a shorter term regulatory agreement would still not allow a building to qualify. Even if this program were better designed, it would not solve the structural problems causing the financial crisis in rent-stabilized
Your time is expired. Thank you.
Adam, do you want to conclude? Go.
Sure.
Take a few minutes.
Many billions of dollars in investment, far more than what J51 or any government program would provide, are needed to improve rent-stabilized housing. For instance, NYCHA requires $80 billion to improve its 180,000 units, which is less than a fifth the number of rent-stabilized housing. The only way to fix rent-stabilized housing is to ensure revenue exceeds operating costs, and this means regular influxes of revenue, whether from tenants or the government, must be provided, and operating costs must be reduced. A one-time tax abatement will not solve the problems that these buildings have, that they do not earn enough revenue to operate. Again, thank you for holding this hearing today.
Thank you. Thank you, Adam. I now call up Ed Yeager.
Your time is starting.
Hello, I'm chair of the Coordinating Council of Cooperatives, and I see and hear from a lot of co-ops, affordable housing co-ops in the city, and I don't know if the council is aware of how unaffordable affordable housing is becoming. And my co-op is HCR supervised. We're hearing of increases of 40, 45, 50% increases. My own co-op is facing an increase of 45% now. Much of that has to do with capital work, maintaining our infrastructure, much of it driven by local laws, such as Local Law 11, which, don't get me started, is overly strictly enforced. But J51 has been helping us to reduce our cost. If we need J51 to be reauthorized, and what I would say is, if it is not reauthorized, the city council will be adding another straw or more straws to the camel's back. Please reauthorize J51. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ed. Appreciate your testimony. This concludes public testimony. Unless there is anyone else that would like to testify, you should approach the sergeants and let them know. But with that, I want to conclude today's hearing. I think we learned today that the previous iteration of J51 had left a lot to be desired in terms of enforcement mechanisms and just availability of information about the administration of the program. But there are many changes being considered in the proposed legislation, and I look forward to negotiating with the administration and with my colleagues for an improved authorization. Thank you all so much, and have a great afternoon.